Thank you so much, Mr. President, members of governments, excellencies, dear colleagues and friends. First of all, thanks to the organizers of this Yaorina Economic Forum. I wish them the big success it deserves, and I'm very happy, and it's a great honor for me to address this prestigious audience. Second, I'm a little bit confused at the beginning of this speech, because I am more comfortable in French, but I was told it's better to speak English. I hope it will do good for you. And second, I know very little about the current economic and political situation in the Balkan states. So what can I do and what can I say? What can I do maybe is have some souvenir of a long life as an advisor for different foreign governments in Africa, in Asia, in North America, and of course in Europe. I have a little bit of experience as a member of the European Parliament, and more especially as a chairman of the foundation of our political group, Identity and Democracy, because in the recent months I took an initiative, Good Neighborhood Forum, between European Union and the neighborhood states. And at the end of my speech, I will come back to this initiative because maybe it could be of some interest for some of you. I would have some small thoughts, and I will echo a lot of Mr. Dodic's speech. First of all, have a look at the global figure. History is coming back, and its history is moving at a fast pace now. And history has three things keeping it moving: money, national interest, and demography. And let us have a close look for a while to demographic figures. 1 century ago, the world population of European origins was about 30% of the world population. In the coming 20 years, the share of European population in the world population will be less than 10%. Half a century ago, the European populations were about 3 times sub-Saharan African populations. In the coming 20 years, African populations will count for about 3 to 4 times the whole population in Europe. This is of major consequences. And let me say just 2 major consequences. First of all, maybe you saw the vote at the ONU, National United Nations Assembly. It's not the West isolating Russia. And nowadays, the West is isolating himself. What about? At the vote in the United Nations Assembly, 100 different nations have voted against sanctions or have abstained. And these 100 countries are about 2/3 of the world population and very close to half the global domestic product of the world. The meaning of this vote is very clear. The West is isolating itself at a fast pace. And the second consequence is the absolute stupidity of course, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, but at the end of the day, it's a civil war between European populations. and maybe we are at the end of the West as we knew it. This was the first point, but demographic figures have major consequences of economic pictures and political areas. I just want to point on this issue. Second, what about European Union? I was told by the organizer it could be of great interest if you speak about the Balkan integration in the European Union. I'm afraid I will not be very positive about that issue. Nowadays, European Union is facing three major issues. First one is about our friends, our British friends, Great Britain. I was in the European Parliament during Brexit. And during Brexit, a lot of friends and colleagues, they are seeking strong measures to make the Brits pay, strong measures to humiliate Great Britain, because they want the British people to pay for Brexit. It was a big mistake. Never humiliate a country like Great Britain. And nowadays, Great Britain is seeking revenge. I'm quite close with some of them. They are very active everywhere in the eastern part of Europe. They are selling arms to Kosovo, to Albania, to different countries. They are very active in seeking revenge against European Union with the Visegrad Group, of course, with so much military help to Ukraine, and so on and so on. Never humiliate a country like Great Britain, and it was a big mistake of the European Union. Second thing that is profoundly divisive in the European Union at the moment, all these countries from the eastern part of Europe, not so long under Soviet Union domination, are seeking revenge against Russia. And this is deeply against the national interest of France, of Germany, and other countries. We were seeking trade agreements. We were seeking political agreements with Russia before the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Mr. Macron, the newly re-elected president of France, was talking about European sovereignty. I deeply disagreed with him. Sovereignty is a matter of nation state, and there is not, and there will be not something like European sovereignty. But I agree with him with the great idea of autonomic strategy of Europe. Autonomic strategy means we can build our own defense force, and we can run our independent diplomacy towards Russia, towards China, towards the developing world. That's finished. The war in Ukraine put an end to any idea of sovereign identity or autonomic strategy across European Union, and nowadays everything happened as if the Baltic state and our Poland friends are running the European Union. Third thing, of course, the relationship with the US. I spent a long life, a long professional life as a businessman, and especially as an advisor to foreign countries. And I have just one idea about geopolitics and geoeconomics. The one who pays orders. If you ask the United States to pay for your defense and your security, the United States will command you. This is exactly the current situation. Nowadays, NATO is in control, And nowadays, the European Union is at the end of the United States. And not for a bad reason, for a very good reason. They pay for our security, they pay for our defense forces, so they are in charge of our diplomatic relations and our safety. The only exception will be what is left of the Gaullist France, who will come back after. So, at the moment, European Union is in deep crisis. There was a strong consensus after Brexit not to open the door to any newcomers. We need, in the European Union, we need some time to regain power, to regain spirit, and to regain a clear opinion on the way we will manage this union, to rebuild institutions on common interest and so on, after Brexit. And nowadays, under the control of US and NATO, we are considering the entrance in the European Union of different countries, like Albania, like Montenegro, like North Macedonia, and so on and so on. Let me say very clearly, if we are to admit Ukraine in the European Union without due diligences and due processes, it will be the end of the European Union as we know it. European Union is out of its constituency, out of the interest of the nations that constitute the European Union. We are now under full control of NATO and the United States, and maybe it will be the end of the United Europe as we knew it. My third point will be about, in echo from President Dodik, my third point will be, what about the new world order? If I come back to the long-term history, I can see that in the long time, the power in charge was always the power for order and progress. In the long history, it was the case especially of China. China, because of its meritocratic system of Mandarina, was the main power for order and progress in Eurasia. And I will just quote the big thinker Voltaire. Voltaire, in the 18th century, the father of the Enlightenment philosophers, he wrote, "China is by far the best managed country in the world." China was an anchor for progress, stability, and peace. After that, Great Britain took the role for a while, but obviously the US takes the role, and it was a major achievement. Under President Roosevelt, under President Eisenhower, Truman, and even John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the US were a real force for stability, peace, and progress. Let me say, they have had two major achievements. First of all, after the Second World War, after the complete defeat of Nazi Germany and the Empire of Japan, under President Eisenhower and Truman, they built new alliances, and they helped Germany and Japan to come back into the concert of nations. That was an incredible achievement. And once President Truman told to Henry Kissinger, "This is this kind of thing I am proud of as an American citizen." Let me go back to the Cuba Missile Crisis in 63-64. John Fitzgerald Kennedy told Nikita Khrushchev, "I need a buffer zone. I can't admit nuclear missiles in Cuba very close to the American coast, very close to Florida coast." But what was very interesting for us this morning in this forum, at any time, it's Bob Kennedy that wrote a book about that. At any time during the crisis, we were very close to Third World War. John Fitzgerald Kennedy told his military, we have to be very clear, we are just defending our national interest, we are not against Soviet Union. And after Khrushchev pulled back the nuclear missiles, John Fitzgerald Kennedy ordered his diplomats and militaries, don't humiliate Soviet Union. Don't say anything about the victory. We have just succeeded in defending our national interests, but we respect Russia and we respect Soviet Union. And in no case, this is a victory against Russia. It's quite interesting to remind this Cuban Missile Crisis. At the time we are living the reverse, with Russia and Mr. Lavrov talking many times about the encirclement by nuclear missile from NATO against Russia. But what happens? Never NATO put back the missiles they put in Poland, in Romania, in some other countries against Russia. It's very interesting to see the different treatment of these two crises. Let me come back to this new world order system. The problem is a decaying political system in the US. Nowadays, in every country I advise in the world, there is a strong feeling about that. Our Chinese counterparts have made incredible success in their fight against poverty. In the last 30 years, about 700 million of Chinese citizens have been out of poverty. 700 million Chinese citizens are now in what they call petite aisance, small comfort, and they are asking for middle comfort. This is an incredible achievement of the Chinese government. On the reverse, when you travel across the United States, this is a third world. Infrastructures are in decay. More than 40 million American citizens are living under the poverty line. And if you go to Los Angeles, if you go to San Francisco, to other countries, even Washington, D.C., when I spent 10 days the last months, you have so many homeless. You have so many homeless with no hope, no means of living, no way to go out abject poverty. This is the major failure of the US politics. Nowadays, the US politics are running just for a very small elite class that made a huge amount of money during the COVID-19 crisis. And at the same moment, more than 100 million Americans are fighting against poverty. All over the world, this has the same meaning. The Chinese model is bringing progress and development. The Belt and Road Initiative is bringing progress and development, and the US model is failing. This is of huge consequences for the next future. What is it about? The West is losing ground at a fast pace, and the rest is moving away at a fast pace for progress and development. Let me say a word about the Shanghai Organization. Let me say a word about the Indo-Pacific market, the biggest free trade area in the world. It's no more the European Union. It's a trade union organized around China, around Russia, and other countries of the Indo-Pacific region, And nowadays, the apex of development and innovation is going east. Let me pursue by my fourth point about the new monetary system. Maybe we are seeing coming to the light. Our US friends, our British friends have made two big mistakes in the past weeks. The first one was the seizure of the assets of the Russian Central Bank. I was told by my American friends that the Joe Biden government took the decision without information to the Fed, and the Fed was totally angry against that decision. What does it mean? It means that the US dollar is an arm of mass destruction. It means that what they call central bankers, the weaponization of the US dollar. It never happens before. Even during the Second World War, in the International Settlement Bank, the BOE, settled in Bâle in Switzerland, you have central bankers from Germany, from the US, from Great Britain, from France, that were meeting in Switzerland to organize the international relations between central banks, even during the Second World War. What happens now? If I would be a central banker, even in one of the countries represented here, I would ask myself, what will happen if I don't comply with the US policy? What will happen if I don't comply with Great Britain and US diplomatic involvements and diplomatic positions? Will they seize all my assets in dollars? And this is a deep question running deep everywhere in the world at the moment. Let me say that last week, for the first time in history, the Israeli Central Bank downsized its assets in dollars and in euros, and for the first time introduced reserves in renminbi, the Chinese currency. The second big mistake was the seizure of all properties of so-called Russian oligarchs. That's a major breach of law. And the main asset of the US dollar was the rule of law. What is it about? Don't make a mistake. I have no link with Russian oligarchs and I don't defend them. And maybe a lot of their properties, their yachts and so on, they have been bought by dirty money. Okay, but that's the work of the judiciary to establish it on case by case to organize sanctions. What we saw last month is against these so-called Russian oligarchs was just gangsterism on a large scale. Because no judiciary decisions, no judgment, no inquiries, they are Russians, we can take back their properties everywhere in the world. That's just an hold-up. And everywhere in the world, there are people asking, what will happen with my property in the US, in Great Britain, in Europe? What will happen if I don't comply with American law and European laws? And this is a great question to come. So, my point is, the main asset of the US dollar was the rule of law. If you obey the law, your US dollar are your US dollars. Your property everywhere in the world are your property. What was the great weakness of the renminbi or other currency? They are totally dependent on the political government of China or Russia and so on. Nowadays, the US dollar plays the same role. It's at the hands of the government, of the US government. This is a major failure. And what is coming now is a total divide between a Western monetary system still centered on the US dollar and a new monetary system that is built at the moment between Russia, China, India, and the major country of Asia, with gold and commodities as basis, and a basket of currencies of these countries. The problem for Europe is quite clear and simple, and I want to share it with you. The US are very rich in raw materials and in commodities, and as you know perfectly well, at the moment they are the first producer of oil and gas. It's not the same for the European Union and European countries. And if we are isolated from Russia, from our suppliers from Asia, Indo-Pacific region, even the Middle East that is turning its back to the United States, with what currency can we buy the energy, the raw material, and so on we need? This is a big question, and the new monetary system is heading against the comfort, the way of life, and the purchasing power of our people. I met once the very old leader of Malaysia, Mr. Muhammad Mahathir, and he told, you as Europeans are very comfortable, you can be very peaceful and very comfortable, you just have to live 30% less of your purchasing power. This is exactly the situation we face at the moment. Let me have just one more political view for the end of this speech. I talked about a new system, a new world system for progress and development. I talked a little bit about the new monetary system that is running high now in the eastern part of the world, and of great interest, of course, for Africa and even for South America. Maybe you saw last week Argentina coming into the Belt and Road Initiative. This is a major shift in the world equilibrium. A lot of countries are turning their backs against the US and the European Union at the same moment. And let me say that the future is for populist nationalists. The future is for those who construct better way of life, who renew hopes for a better life for their populations, based on national identity, based on national sovereignty, and based on the control of borders. This is the initiative I try to put away by my Forum for a Good Neighborhood. What is it about? We must recognize that human and political diversity in the world are our best asset. Faced by climate change, faced by major environmental issues, faced by great threats against peace and progress, we will gain peace and progress if we recognize the right to any nation to live under his own laws, to live under his own identity, and the freedom of each country in the world to define its own destiny. And this is a strong basis for our good strategic neighborhood. Never interfere, don't mix, don't intervene outside your borders. You have to recognize the full sovereignty of the nation state, and you have to give full autodetermination to people on their own territories and in their own local communities. That's the way for peace, and that's the way for development, respecting of the environment, the religious faith, and the community's identities. This is the hope I have as a member of the European Parliament, as the chairman of the Foundation of Identity and Democracy Political Group, to achieve something to put an end to the confrontation of globalism. globalism is the way to global war. Because those who want to impose a unique law, a unique system, a unique financial system in the world are putting the world at great risk of a global conflict. Human beings are not the same. And never, never we will have the world under the control of a unique hyperpower. And those who want to achieve that project are anti-humanist and they are anti the world progress and the world peace. This is why the transhumanist project is a project for war. This is why the propaganda for a new world order under the Davos guise and the likes are a project for war and a project for submitting people to foreign wills and foreign interests. The financial mafia in control of the city of London and Wall Street in New York are pushing the world to a third world war. At the moment, it's my most serious concern. We are heading for very dangerous time. I hope I could be of some help to achieve new peace agreements, especially in the eastern part of Europe, but also in troubled places in the world. I hope this kind of economic and political forum would be of some help to build the new agreements for peace between nations, for peace between people, for progress, and for new hope for European Union members and our close friends in the Balkans and in the eastern part of Europe. Thank you very much.
Hvala. Hvala svima. Sada slijedi pauza. Kolege iz medija bi zamolio da pređu u pres salu jer slijedi i zvanična konferencija za novinare. Ostale učesnike bi zamolio da od 12:30 budu u salama. U sali 1 od 12:30 održava se panel pod nazivom Šta nam donosi energetska tranzicija, a u sali 2 od 12:30 održava se panel pod nazivom Perspektive tržišta radne snage. Hvala vam, očekujemo vas nakon pauze.